maybe
Eric, let just people to attend. So maybe we'll just have all the people attending in next 1 or 2 minutes. So people are just getting in.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is welcome as everyone's dialing in now. We're going to give people a few more minutes. So thank you for joining us this morning, and we'll start in just a few minutes.
So hi everyone, we're here. We're just waiting for all the members or the participants to log in. So we'll just give another 1 minute for everyone to log in. Whoop, on a Monday morning, we have lots of participations.
Hi, this is Kevalya.
I'm Mr. Sandra.
I'm so sorry. I think my internet of my laptop, my home internet is not.
No worries. We are live. We are live, and we are just waiting for another 1 minute or maybe less than 30 seconds for others to join, because we all the participants are also logging in. So we just wait for another 30 seconds and then.
So I'm going to be on my mobile, huh?
Sure. Whatever you are, just be there. I mean, we can see you. Yeah. Wherever you are, however you are. Yeah, Eric, let's get going.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Eric Malice, and I'm going to be your host for this session of stress testing your P&L and managing liquidity. As you can see, I'm actually dialing in now from my home. This is my kitchen, and it's still decorated from a family party we had yesterday. Because right now we're all managing this global pandemic together. Coronavirus, COVID-19 has struck all of us in unique ways, and many of us have been working from home and practicing social distancing. So in light of what's happening with the corporates, wanted to bring everybody together on this webcast to talk a little bit about stress testing your P&L management. And if I can ask any of the panel members who are currently logged in and not on mute, if you could please go on mute to eliminate the background noise, that would be better for the viewers who are logging in from their homes. Thank you. So what we're doing now is, with this economic situation that's been evolving, we know it's become an increasingly unpredictable crisis, right? Corporates are struggling to manage this situation. And so a number of folks have come together to put this session together in order to help corporates and advanced level startups gain perspective from the experience of experts on various organizational aspects of managing a company through this crisis, particularly when it comes to your P&L and managing liquidity, so that we can have a reasonable set of standards to get us through. At the same time, while we're thinking about corporate strategies and structures for this, we also want to get some exposure from startup companies that have been working on innovative solutions that might lend themselves to ways in which corporates can actually make it through and then thrive beyond this situation. So what we're going to do today is actually the first of 6 sessions that are going to run from April 6th to April 11th at 11 a.m. IST. And each session will have 2 parts. We'll begin with a panel discussion where we have a group of experts on the topic of each particular day, followed by a series of presentations by these startups where they can provide a summary of their potential solution as it may affect corporates around the world. So I'm going to briefly introduce the organization putting this event on, in this entire series is called CorpGini. CorpGini is a platform for corporates to consistently discover and learn disruptive technology solutions by, in part, engaging with startups to help adopt those innovative plans. And that's why we set up this series to cover both common questions corporates are facing now, as well as access to some of those startups. Because as we're expanding this CorpGini platform, it's helpful to give you a taste of what it might be like as we embark in this series and then embark further on in any relationship with CorpGini. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to give you a brief agenda of what's going to happen tonight, and then we're going to get started with the panel. Before I do that, I want to first thank the partners. So let's begin with thanking the entire team of Pantomath Group and Z Nation Labs, who have worked mainly in the Bombay Stock Exchange, BSE, also UC Berkeley Extension in USA, the British Deputy High Commission in the UK, Toronto Business Development Center in Canada, and Business Standard, amongst others. I also myself, to give you a little bit of background, I am the co-founder and CMO of a computer vision and AI company originally formed in Bangalore. I'm also the partner and co-founder of a legal and strategy consulting firm called Talus Partners, headquartered in Silicon Valley in California, where I'm dialing in from right now. What's going to happen in the format is we're going to have a panel discussion that's going to start for about 40 minutes, 30 minutes of which we have my dear friend Amit Jain from Z Nation Labs, who's going to lead the discussion. And then for about 10 minutes or so, we'll take some questions from the audience. Following that, we'll have our startup showcase for about 20 minutes, where a number of startups are going to present on how their solution might be able to help corporates through this program. Each startup is going to get no more than 2 minutes to provide a really brief solutions presentation. And then we may have 1 or 2 questions from the same panel that will be leading off in the panel discussion. If anyone's having any issues with streaming, make sure you turn off your other devices on the Wi-Fi network. That might help with connectivity. If you get kicked off, refer to the email for the original instructions. You should be able to get right back on. And there will be a poll of questions during the panel discussion where people can pose questions, and then we have a panel filtering those in the back to consolidate, and I'll try to present them to you. Participants will also be asked to take a survey at the end of the session where we'll ask about your experience so we can improve this and make sure that we're serving your best interest for the rest of this week. There will be a link to donate money for the benefit of underprivileged people suffering from COVID-19. We will follow up with that link at the end of this presentation in an email, so if anyone wishes to donate, feel free to do so. We will also provide our Twitter handle, corp_gini, and any other questions anyone has, feel free to respond to the email and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So that provides an overview of what you can expect tonight. I want to thank once again everyone who's worked hard to put this together and bring us together during this treacherous times. And thank you, the audience, for joining us and giving us some time of your day. We look forward to this discussion. And now I'd like to introduce my friend and partner of Z Nation Labs, Amit Jain. Amit, you're on mute, my friend.
Myself. Okay, thanks for reminding, Eric. Hello, everyone. I hope you will all have lit the candles yesterday and are keeping safe and healthy. I'm Amit Jain, co-founder of Z Nation Lab and CorpGini. CorpGini is a tech platform for corporates who consistently discover and learn about disruptive tech solutions, and that is what we thought that we do something here to help everyone. This are difficult times for all of us, and therefore let me start with something which is kind of one of the quote which I read recently, that someone asked once Nelson Mandela that what were you doing and how did you manage to cope up with all the sufferings during the 27 years of imprisonment you were there, and to which Nelson Mandela replied that I was not suffering but I was preparing. Today is the time for us to prepare ourselves for the transformative changes that will emerge after the COVID gets over. Prepare to manage the situations with a balanced state of mind and with a responsible decision-making and forward-thinking attitude. The need of an hour is to introspect our current financial situations, plan for the contingencies, and at the same time prepare to capitalize the opportunities that will emerge when the market will bounce back. I have with me a distinguished panel of industry experts who have accepted the request to share their experience on how to deal with the current liquidity tightening situation and approach the unknown. What I will do now is that I will request the panel members to give just a one-line intro about themselves, and then we'll get going with the questions and the Q&A. And I hope that you will be able to kind of get the maximum benefit of it. If there is a lag in the network, please don't kind of get worried about it. We'll also send a recorded video to all of you post this session. So may I request the panel members to just kind of introduce a quick line of introduction. We can start with Kamal, Abhishek.
Hi, this is Kamal Vasagiri. I'm part of the corporate venture group within Honeywell. We look for disruptive technologies that are going to change the way we do business, both core and adjacent markets. and we invest for companies that help us increase our strategic goals or get to them sooner. So thank you for the opportunity.
Hi, good morning, everybody. This is Abhishek Goenka. I'm the CEO of a company called CoWorks, which is a flexible office space provider. I also run the CoWorks Foundry and represent a family office through which we do startup investments.
Hello, hi. This is Sai Venkateshwaran. I'm a partner with KPMG and lead the CFO advisory practice. I also lead smart digital finance solutions for KPMG globally. Happy to be here with all of you and seeing how we can navigate COVID-19 together.
Mr. Handa.
Hi, good morning to everybody. I'm Keval Handa here. I was the CEO of Pfizer India, been in pharmaceutical, been in engineering industry, and currently I'm the chairman of Union Bank of India. Look forward to this interesting session.
Jyotsna, do you want to go? Jyotsna, you're on mute. Jyotsna, you have to unmute yourself.
Sure, sorry. Yeah, I'm Jyotsna Sharma. I'm the CFO and head of IT at Bridgestone India, which is the world's largest tire company. Heading IT as well as finance is like a tug of war, whereby finance is holding back and IT is looking forward. So it's extremely challenging time to balance between the two for me right now.
Looking forward to it. Arun? Arun, you're on mute. Arun,
Sorry,
you'll have to unmute.
sorry. Yeah, hi. Arun
No.
Giri, co-founder and group editor at Tax Information, Legal Information Portal Tax Sutra. So he's CA by qualification, but I've always been a journalist with CNBC, then Bloomberg UTV, and now we run Tax Sutra, which is a tax information portal.
Okay, with that, let's just start with the panel discussion, and I promise that I would try to make it as interesting as possible and as informative as possible. And the panel discussion will be more on the experience sharing basis. But with that, let me just start with one question, right, to all the panelists. What would you describe the current situation in just one word? Just one word. I would, we can go with the same flow. How do you describe the current situation in just one word? Kamal, I think you guys can all unmute yourself because we'll go fast now.
Yeah, if I could start, extraordinary.
Extraordinary. Sure.
I would say unprecedented.
Okay.
It's a once in a lifetime situation.
That's a 5 words, but yeah, I'll take it. Yeah, Sai.
Opportunity.
Opportunity. Yeah. Mr. Handa.
I said that it's once in a lifetime situation.
Once in a lifetime situation. Okay.
I would say irresponsible.
Responsible. Okay. Now, if that be the case, let me start with a very one-line question, and the answer should be just yes and no. Is it a good decision for the corporates to extend the lockdown after this 21 days? Yes or a no? So I'll repeat the question. Will it be a good decision if the lockdown gets extended beyond this?
Amit, can there be an yo?
No, let's just have this. Just want to understand yes or no quickly. Do we want to go again by Kamal? I mean, we just try to start in the same sequence. Kamal, Abhishek.
Yeah,
I'll repeat me to just kind of remain.
A yes or no answer.
Yes,
I mean, I don't have enough facts to say one way or the other, to be honest with you. But
okay. Abhishek?
Whatever works better for health, I guess. Yeah.
Yes.
Abhishek?
Yes.
Mr. Handa?
Yes, I think so.
Yes, I think so. Yes.
Yes.
Sai?
Yes, I think so.
Arun?
No.
No. So now we have a mix of yeses and no for the extension of the lockdown. And therefore, let me just understand, what does the lockdown mean in just one word today? So what is this lockdown from your perspective? Just in one word again.
Caution.
Standstill.
Standstill, yeah. Mr. Handa?
I think it's an opportunity.
Opportunity.
Safety.
Sai?
Safety first. Same. I'm with Jyotsna. Safety.
I think it's an option T.
Option. Okay. So if that be the case, let me just go to the last question before I go into the detail thing. But how would you describe that? How are corporates managing this lockdown in one line? So just, can you describe that? How are these corporates, and when we are talking about corporates, the businesses all across are managing this lockdown in one line?
So engagement.
Engagement. They are doing engagement. Okay, that's nice. Kamal.
Yeah, manage customers, manage employees, and those are the two main things at this point in time. And make sure balance sheet is well covered for when the opportunity comes back in again to grow the.
So I'll repeat the question again. How are they managing today? What is your assumption that how are they managing it? Abhishek?
To me, it's the blind leading the blind.
I'll take that. Sai?
Yeah, I think they're getting to realize what's the art of the possible in operating in this environment. But yeah, one of the key elements is, of course, to stay engaged with the people, and I think take care of both their emotional and kind of physical well-being. I think that's an important thing.
Yeah, Jyotsna?
I would say the corporates are bonding and binding for a common social cause. So a lot of things are being thought in a socialistic approach to come together onto the situation.
I'll take that because in just last 1 week alone, I was able to kind of connect to maybe more than 1,000 corporates, which I have never thought about it, which I would do in an entire year. So yeah, I agree to that people are getting more bonded together. Arun?
Running on fumes. That's the word the famous NBA commentator used when Michael Jordan sunk his last two-pointer to win his 6th championship. Running on fumes, most corporates.
Okay, so let me now go to kind of a little serious note now on just trying to understand that the measures taken by the government and the RBI, are they enough to manage the liquidity? I'm just kind of making a statement that the measure taken by the government and the RBI are enough to kind of manage the liquidity. And I would just want to kind of take your perspective on that. How do you think the liquidity kind of gauging? So kind of we're just trying to get more into the details about the managing the liquidity portion. So just kind of, anyone of you want to kind of take that first, and then we can start deliberating on that point for another minute or two.
So I think I just take this first. There are a whole lot of measures announced by RBI as well as the banks to support the liquidity. The challenge right now is the liquidity required for fixed expenses. The operations are mostly at a standstill, but there are a whole lot of fixed expenses that has to pay. And the major one is the salaries. Efforts have been made also to ensure that the EMIs and other payments, so that the liquidity pressure comes down, is deferred or a moratorium is given. But the issue is, it's again what time frame we are talking about. If the time frame is 1 or 2 months, I think these measures will hold good. If the time frame goes beyond 3 to 6 months, I think then we are in a major challenge.
Makes sense. And do you think, therefore, I have a follow-up question there, but I would take another, couple of more suggestions there. Sai, Abhishek, do you want to kind of throw some light out here?
Yes, I would go with, I think what's been done is probably not enough. I think these are great first steps, but I think looking at how things are progressing, I think this the impact of this is going to be seen for much longer. And therefore, the benefit and the relief to corporates may need to be extended for a longer period of time. I think the current measures do give them the much needed liquidity, but I don't think that's enough to sustain this period before the economic growth kind of picks up. And I think the government may need to come out with additional, so apart from just extending the period of relief and relaxations, I think also come up with specific targeted measures to for specific sectors, in particular to kind of protect jobs and so on. I think also another thing to consider, and there's something actually that came up as an idea on one of the other panel discussions I was on, was to look at maybe even some innovative tax measures like bringing in a concept of tax carryback as compared to only allowing a carry forward of tax losses, etc. Because some of those things will kind of help corporates get a lot more liquidity to kind of sustain this period of time.
Makes sense.
Sure, if I may go next. So I kind of agree largely with Sai. In my view, again, not enough has been done. And while I would give some benefit of doubt to the government that it's very hard really to predict what's coming and really what the dimension of the overall package should be, I do believe that, again, to some extent, there's a little bit of a denial situation within the government, just like there was or there is on the larger economic situation even pre the COVID crisis. So to my mind, I think there are obvious limitations to what our government can do for a variety of reasons. But to me, the most important thing is at least let there not be a denial of the crisis, both for individuals and for corporates. To some extent, I think that is what at least I'm reading. And once we're past the denial phase, then it's easier to implement things instead of doing it in a position where you don't acknowledge the on-ground realities.
Sure, makes sense. So then I'll take a mix of that. The government is doing its best.
Yeah, just one addition, Amit, if you don't mind. Very humbly, the situation is unprecedented, once in 100 years. Any response from the government will not be enough. Any response will not be enough. The government is not even gone 1/10 of what it can. If the US has passed a $2 trillion package, whatever response India has will be woefully adequate for the crisis that we are facing. And I very humbly submit that I don't think anyone even has a measure of the economic crisis that is about to unfold. The stories that I'm already hearing from corporates are too horrifying to be even right now imagined. So I don't think we even have a measure of the crisis. And liquidity, the question that you put, opening the taps of liquidity will not be enough. How many banks today will have the confidence to lend to a small and medium business? I am a small and medium business employing 70 people. Ask me how tough it is to get a bank loan. Ask me.
So Amit, I totally agree out here. I think government has done some things and they cannot always be enough. Like as Abhishek said, nothing is enough in this situation. But how the execution of this whole disbursals which have been done to individuals and corporates, how the awareness amongst the small and medium scale corporates is spread across is going to be key so that they could avail of whatever little bit has been given, that is being reaching to the right people to use it as well or be aware.
I would say that the geographies across the world. I and Eric are based out here in Valley, and we've been struggling since last 3 weeks on where is the portal which will give the loan. So it's not that India, but it's globally the same chaos in terms of how and what. So there is a package which will be disbursed, but not many people are able to access that and how to do it. And none of the banks, even here in US, knows what to do about it and how to go and do the disbursement. So I would take that, but I will move to the next question because I think the audiences out here would want to say that government will play its own role and it will play its own part. Let's come to the corporate, that what we could do as corporates, right? So my question would be that cost cutting is an automatic reflex, right? Everyone would go towards cost cutting in the current situation. But how can I, as a leader, if I am a leader of an organization, take a responsible decision to keep the company afloat, but at the same time balance the interest of my employees, long-term sustainability of my business, and also manage the shareholders' expectation? So do you want to kind of throw some light around that? It's a flux for me as a corporate owner, right? That at one time I want to do a cost-cutting measures, and at the end of the day, second thing, I'm also kind of considering the emotional and the responsible boss I am to kind of take care of my employees. So do you want to throw some lights around how should they measure, what steps they've taken, or in your experiences, what are the best ways to do it?
Can I take this one to get started?
Sure.
I guess cost cutting, as a CFO, I've never propagated cost cutting at any point in time. It's about cost optimization all through. But at this point in time, more than anything else, we need cost consciousness and conscience. I think each individual across the organization or the nation needs to be really conscious about every penny that they are spending. Is that for the right cause in the short term or the long term? And any decisions which corporations will take henceforth will have to be really keeping this into mind. If we look at the stakeholders, when it comes to the investors or the shareholders, they're here for long run. They are not here for a year or two. So not having profits for a year or two would not or should not matter as much. As much what would matter is how quickly we can turn around and get back to norm. And for that, each one will have to put his or her bit into it. Maybe we'll have to compromise on our profits. Maybe we'll have to, people who have surplus cash, support their periphery businesses at very little interest rate. So even if banks or institutions are not able to support, we are feeding in our own channel partners with the right support beyond what we can be thinking of like. So I guess cost is one aspect which has to run across. But
This is
beyond
one
that,
important point, Jyotsna, you mentioned here, and I would just want to highlight there. You're saying that companies like Bridgestone and the companies, large multinationals or the companies which are larger, should also go ahead and support their suppliers, should go ahead and support their OEM providers so that they can sustain. Otherwise, in the long run, they will also feel the pinch of the supply chain.
yes.
That's an important point.
At this moment, it's about the entire chain system around us, which should be supported.
Sure.
See, what we need to also balance it with our cash flows. If your cash flow is very stressed, and then you start making payments to your suppliers, then you have a challenge even to sustain your employees. So I think most of the companies have to first look at their cash flow very, very carefully. And then, all those non-value added, the costs need to go off completely. Capital budgeting has to go off completely. No capital expenditure has to be really incurred. And the companies have to really tighten costs because the cash flow is going to be a major challenge. And if you don't look at the cash flow and then you incur all the costs, even salaries, how long can you sustain? Let's say if the banks are not able to support you after 1 month or 2 months, how long can you support salaries? And therefore, the time has come that when you have to take a step back and say, how do I sustain my cash flow? And what are the prioritizing I need to do now to sustain it?
Yeah, I'll add a little bit to that. I mean, I work primarily with startup companies at this point in time of varying scale and size. So if you're really early in your scheme of execution, what we have seen is, or rather what we have optimized for is reduction in sales force and increasing the product readiness to be able for the company to be able to be ready as soon as that happens, right? So there may not be many new sales that happen from an account management standpoint, but you have to make sure where you balance your resources at this point in time. You would rather get the product right versus sales at this point in time, given there's not much travel and everything, not much new sales happening from that perspective. That's one thing that we have seen. And as everybody has been suggesting, cash flow and how long do you go without needing additional cash is an important constraint in this capital constrained environment at this point.
Yeah, just one thought, Amit here. I fully concur. I couldn't concur more with what Mr. Handa said. Every word that he says, has come straight from my heart as well. In addition, just one sentence is each one of us, especially those in the startup world like me, I think all of us will have to reimagine our P&L, reimagine our businesses. If we think what we were doing 1 week back is relevant today equally to our customers, then that assumption may not be true. We will have to reimagine the way we do business. That means tough calls, that also being as nimble-footed as you can.
Makes sense. Sai, do you want to add one point there and then we'll go to the next question?
So to me, I think a lot of these are about taking some right decisions. I think protecting the interests of employees is the right decision, but at the same time, taking some other hard calls for the long-term sustainability of the organization is another right decision. So it's a lot of times a dilemma between one right decision versus another. And I think clearly it's about cutting some of the kind of flab, I think getting more frugal during this point in time. And I think before you ultimately go down the path of slashing any employee kind of benefits or for that matter laying off, I think there are a number of other levers that can be exercised to kind of bring the overall cost base down. And I think that's what organizations need to do before they ultimately embark on anything that actually impacts employees significantly.
So Sai, on that point, right, I have a follow-up question to you. Is generally in the right time, right, when the timings are right, things are going right, people take a lot of wrong financial decisions, and however the impact is not felt because the revenues are clicking. But in this time, how can one introspect those decisions and try to fix them? You've been working with a lot of CFOs and a lot of companies and just trying to understand that how is there a way I can go and introspect my decisions which you have taken in the past and fix them now, because this is a time I have the time, and then now I can go it. So is there kind of an exercise or a method to the madness which we have done in the past because of these sales kicking in, but now is there a way to look at that?
No, absolutely. I think this is the time when a lot of the organizations that we're working with, and even us as a large organization, I think we're looking really hard internally to see where we need to kind of bring in a better cost efficiency and kind of manage our kind of P&L and cash in a much more effective manner. So clearly, when it comes to costly decisions that have been taken in the past, etc., I think it's a time to look very closely at some of these, and if required, I think cut your losses. So whether it was a high cost proposition or a loss making proposition, I think it's important to not get too emotional about some of these decisions that have been taken in the past, but to step back and look at it from a point of view of stewardship and from the lens of long-term sustainability of the organization. And I think take some of those hard calls as required.
Abhishek, you are on the forefront of real estate, and I mean, you would be doing some drastic measures. Do you want to share some experiences around how do you look at the landscape now, since everyone is talking about cost cutting? Because I was talking to the CTO of one of the large payment company here in US, and people are trying to see that if everything works like this online, do we need to really have a real estate? So people are really considering their position around whether we want to kind of make this as a new normal. So do you think any change in strategies people should do and the cost cutting part of it?
Sure. I think there are a couple of observations based on your questions. One is that, on the cost cutting side, I think we're a little bit in a gridlock situation now, right? Because every company says, I want to cut my cost and maximize my revenues. And and your revenues are somebody else's cost and so on and so forth, right? So it's a complete gridlock. And if you look at our business as an example, our biggest input or supply cost is the payments we make to landlords for rent. And similarly, our revenue is what others pay us. We don't call it rent, but it is, fully serviced fee for the workspace, right? So effectively, we are a value-added provider where we are taking something on a wholesale level, adding value to it, and selling it on a retail level. And therefore, the whole sort of theory of cutting costs or rebates or whatever has to work on both sides, because if our members don't pay us, we can't pay rent. If our landlords insist on rent, we have to insist on our members paying up. So, it's a little bit about who blinks first kind of situation that we are all finding ourselves, unfortunately. But to your larger question on will the real estate sector suffer dramatically, again, I would just answer it quickly in two parts. One is, as far as flex workspaces are concerned, our view and my personal view actually is that it will increase, because one of the whole theories has been that flexibility allows companies to avoid longer term and larger cost commitments. And I think if there is anything that will prove that it is good to have flexibility, it is going to be this crisis. Longer term on real estate in general, again, I don't expect people will start working from homes long term. I think there's enough evidence already in these few weeks as to what is the psychological impact on employees, and we are all social beings at the end of the day. So I don't think once everything is safe and sound that there will be any material change in the need for people to have their own workspaces.
Can I just add one quick comment, 10 seconds on just 10 seconds on cost cutting? I feel it's also a moral obligation at this point. There is a social contract as well that we ought to protect the jobs of everyone possible. If that means that the senior leadership everywhere must make an example and cut their pay first, I think that's the way to go about it. At this point, there is a moral obligation to protect jobs.
Let's just move to the I'll take that it's a moral obligation, and let's just move a little more forward looking, right? So assuming this will get over soon and the market will start rebounding, what internal processes, operational areas the company should hold guard now, so that when the market opens, they are in the best position to capitalize the opportunity? So I would want to go with Jyotsna and Kamal to start with. Right? Hey, how are you guys looking at Honeywell, or how are you guys looking at Bridgestone? That hey, this is going to get over soon. And for that matter, KPMG, a lot of clients and KPMG might not be able to pay fees today. But how are you trying to see that the opportunity is going to right, and what are you trying to do today so that tomorrow when the opportunity markets open, you will be able to take the opportunity at hand?
I mean, if we look at the way we are trying to structure ourselves, first is to take people into confidence, whether it's employees, customers, vendors. Keep the communication open with them that, guys, we are there with you all. It's not a short-term relationship, it's for the long term. Because our best of vendors, our customers, and our dealers, channel partners are critically important to us. At the same time, employees are constantly being kept connected with that. They also need to have the communications ongoing. So beyond COVID, to think about future. So there is a matrix which has been laid on what should be the talking points with our counterparts, be it customers, vendors, or so forth. That what are the challenges they see they could be facing. It's not about talking about whether you have masks. We have moved beyond that point now. So it's about saying that if you have to restart, how much of your labor was outsourced labor? Do you think they will come back? Do you think your machinery restart time is going to be much more and there could be cost? So we are already starting gathering from all these channels the information which is most critical to get quickly started as soon as we are back into the run. Those teams which have been set are also going to come up with solutions. So we move down to the next layer of the leadership to do this work for us and summarize it to us. So first immediate thing would be a short run, a quick short run to get started. Post which we are also looking at the bigger long run where we're looking at how businesses would change from a production to supply chain to using technology. So there's a separate team which has teams which have been set apart to say how we could really in future, if such things were to happen again, God forbidden, then how we could sit at home and continue with our production. How we could go for 3D printing as a technology in the tire space. So we've already started thinking totally different around all of this.
I'll summarize that. So you as an organization are looking at the current situation and trying to fix what you could do. At the same time, there is a separate task force which has been set to see that what else we could do. So to ensure that if we come into this kind of situations in the future, we are well prepared for that duty. Kamal, do you want to add some line, because both from Honeywell Ventures and Honeywell, there are a lot of things you guys would be also doing that.
Yeah, so I mean, in the sense, we are from a venture perspective, we are just making sure that our portfolio companies that we have invested in are taken care of first, as much as we are making sure that Honeywell as an organization also is strategically positioning itself to make sure the production levels are set. We are also at the forefront of developing the N95 masks that have been shot in the US, and we have repurposed a couple of factories on our end to be able to manufacture millions of N95 masks that are in shortfall right now here in the US, and that they are being produced. That's more tactical at this point in time. We're trying to figure out what's the production levels, and Jyotsna was saying, making sure that our vendors, our customers, and most importantly, the employees are all taken into confidence around what is happening, how we are thinking about it. Transparency is in order.
Transparency in communication, I heard from both you and Kamal, is very critical. Mr. Handa, you wanted to say something out here?
Yeah. So I think it's very critical to connect with your customers and your employees. The customers are the one which will define what they would require in the next few months or so. And I think here you need to understand that it's not business as usual. So focus on what it matters most in terms of your profitability and in terms of moving things forward. You don't have to manufacture things that may be up on the stock for another 6 months, but manufacture those stuff which is out in the next day from the factory. So I think that prioritization has to be very critical done. If you are going to go to the market immediately, need to focus on only those types of products where the customers' demand would be more, and not to focus on the products where the demand may take some time to come up. That's very, very critical. Okay. Managing your inventory and your debtors become very, very critical. And you might have got your money stuck with your debtors because they might have not paid you and are not likely to pay you for another 3 months. And you might have also got stuck with your inventory which might have been built up on some demand, future demand, and maybe it's not valid also. So how do you take care of these two things is very, very critical. So engaging your customers with debtors, how do you then work together to ensure that, you don't make the full demand and says, give me the money, then only I will supply goods to you. That doesn't work in the marketplace. So you need to work very closely with your customers and see how do you do it. As far as employees is concerned, I have a very good experience. We've been advising some companies in Baddi in the pharmaceutical sector. We have opened 2 units there. And the day we said that we are going to open, to our surprise, the entire staff came back. And they were so disciplined that everybody is now wearing masks, keeping distance, both at the packing lines. Also, they have cut one packing line each between the distance of the 2 people so that there is a proper distance. And so people are aware of it, but we need to build it up. The other thing is the way you want to do business is going to change dramatically. Digital has really now been, last few days, I have seen everybody is on digital. So the way you want to conduct yourself with your employees, for example, the field force, the sales guys, is going to be different. The demands for having physical meetings will come down dramatically. And I'm saying very dramatically. So the real estate, the hospitality industries are going to not get any benefits now, because most of us have now learned to be more digital savvy and doing business through digital, and doesn't feel a need now to have a physical presence anywhere. So I think the way we're going to conduct ourselves, engage ourselves with the customers, with our own employees, is also going to be quite different.
I guess social distancing is going to be the norm for future.
Yeah, I agree to that. And I quickly, right, I was talking to, again, someone, a city of a very large kind of a multinational out here in the valley. And one of the things which they did is that they tried to kind of put the metrics on the other thing which they can do it. So their deployment on the software side, it was a software company, is 150% more. Their deployment on the kind of a tagging on the kind of a the bugs which were there, they wanted to fix, is like 350% more. The productivity of the employees has now become 140% more. So they were trying to find out the metrics, and they were saying that except for just kind of going and being their physical, all other metrics are like shooted up. So it's not that we just need to kind of look at this as a kind of a lockdown, but we could also look at the opportunities which lies there. I mean, so was the team with CorpGini, and we for the last 1 week we were like working like almost 18 hours a day. So that's a kind of an thing which people can look at if they think differently. Sai, do you want to add something, or we move to the audience questions? Because I have a couple of questions, but I would want, there are a lot of audience questions, and Eric is there kind of pinging me that, let us just take a few audience questions as well. So Eric, do you want to go with the audience question, or should I take one more question and then do it?
Yeah, we've got quite a few questions from the audience, actually. So while they've been coming in, we've been working behind the scenes to try to consolidate some of the leading themes in the questions. So the first question from the audience, there's been a lot of talk about, on the one hand, we need to cut some specific costs, right, in order to stay afloat and be more efficient. On the other hand, we've talked about the need for new technology, thinking about new methods of operations and efficiency and that sort of innovation, which actually requires capital expenditures and investment. So although theoretically it's easy to balance, yeah, we need to be more efficient and invest in that while also cutting costs. In the immediate, there's sort of competing goals, because one requires capital and one is about reducing capital. So what are some practical steps that companies can think about taking in order to appropriately balance these two competing interests?
So that was my next question also, and the audience is also thinking that whether we should diversify and try to spend more money out there, or should we try to kind of balance to kind of recoup in the current businesses. How, we are at the we are at a point where we have two opportunities, one to manage the business and second to also diversify. So what should we do?
So maybe I'll just share my thoughts initially. So we are a services organization, right? And people are our kind of key assets, or the only assets that we have. And I think we are clearly seeing that I think what is happening today is going to fundamentally change the way we live, work, play, and everything else. And so there is And I think some of the other panelists spoke about the whole focus on digital, etc. And I think we are going to see a world which is very, very different. And I think we are clearly creating that new normal. So one of the things that we are focusing on right at this time is actually about upskilling all of our people and getting them ready for what we call as a more digital future, because we've been looking at the future of finance from a digital perspective and so on, but we would have thought that it would take us about 2 years to actually, for large organizations to really embrace that and get to that point. But today with COVID-19, I see that probably happening in 6 months' time. And therefore, I think important for finance organizations worldwide, important for people in consulting organizations like us to be able to embrace that change and be ready for that future. So our people are being upskilled to take on challenges that we think will come and be relevant in the future. So, and irrespective of whether it is within our organization or whether it is within our client organizations where they decide to go and look at opportunities. So I think this is, we are actually using this downtime quite effectively to see how we upskill our people. So at least that's one of the perspectives that I wanted to kind of add.
So everyone is following the Mr. Nelson Mandela quote that no one is suffering, everyone is preparing. Yeah, that is something which I like it. Yeah. So Abhishek, do you want to give some thought around that, or we should move to the next question?
Just very quickly, I mean, I think it has to be a combination, and you have to, each business has to make an assessment. I don't think any business can assume that whatever product or service or way of selling the product or service today will be the future. I think some change is inevitable, and therefore you have to constantly think of how you will engage with your customer in the new paradigm. So I would concur that preparation is the key right now.
Makes sense. Eric, do you have any other question, or should we? Hello, Eric, you're on mute.
Sure. So another question that we have from the audience, some people wanted to get clarity on exactly what the measures are that we know, I assume particularly in India, that have actually been passed that we can rely on versus what is still to be determined in the future.
Can you repeat the question, Eric?
So the question is if we can get clarity on what the bank, presumably in India, has actually determined and what assurances, relief packages, measures we know are put in place, as opposed to ones that are maybe in discussion but have not yet been decided.
Mr. Handa, do you want to throw some light out here, because we are
So,
a banker?
okay, very good. So I think the 1,70,000 crores which the government promised, which really was for the bottom of the pyramid people. And we have actually seen the amounts getting credited to Jantan accounts, and people have come and started removing it. We have also seen the money getting to the Chola ladies' account, and a whole lot of stuff which the government has promised has gone the direct benefits. So if anybody says that this money is not going to the bottom of the pyramid, it's not true. Actually, people have got the money in the bank and they have started using it. That's one. As far as the RBI and the banks are concerned, for the moratorium, which is in real, there have been a moratorium given for repayment. NPAs are not being now classified because you have not paid payment. So that thing is happening. My only caution to all of you, even my friend MSME guys here, that you approach the bank. Bank may not do it on own. So you need to go to the bank and approach them. All the banks are working, by the way. And there is no branch also which has stopped functioning. This is incredible. You know, all the branches are working. You can go to the branch and tell them what are the things that you are going to do for me. There's an increased working capital that is given on your exact loans, which is some banks are given to the extent of 10 to 15%. Go and take the increased capital. There is a moratorium period given. Go and take the moratorium period into account. And if you want to discount, there is a mechanism of discounting your bills also through a trade mechanism. Go to the trade mechanism account. So all these measures are for real. There is nothing on paper, and actually you can take advantage of it.
Eric, we'll take one more. Thank you, Mr. Handa, for that. And you know, because there are a lot of SMEs in India who are relying on the finance and the bank and as a mode to kind of manage the working capital, and it would be really important for the banks to act these things. Eric, we'll take one last question, if any. Otherwise, we'll move to the next session on the startups, because startups have just started logging in, and we will request all the panel members there to be there, because the startups are going to give their 2 minute things on how they are kind of contributing in their way to help the corporates out here. So Eric, do you want to take the last question, or we just move on to the startups?
Yeah, we have plenty of questions from the audience, so we'll take one more. I'll make it a compound question, so maybe we can get a couple answers on the different parts. So people are wondering about the worst case scenarios, particularly with industries. So the first part of the question is, which industries are likely to be hit hardest by the coronavirus pandemic? And then second part to that is, those companies that are going to be very susceptible to these market changes, what are some immediate steps that they should take to prepare for the worst?
Sai, Abhishek, anyone want to go that first? Sai? It's a tough question because
quite a few industries, according to me, will be severely hit from whatever I am talking to as a journalist with a lot of industrialists, but there will be no holy cows. This, if there is a depression this time, and not a severe recession, but a depression, there will be no holy cows whatsoever. Each one of us will be impacted in varying degrees, for sure.
So I also connected with media. So I would like to take the entertainment and media industry. Now, people are not going to go to the theater in the next 3 to 6 months. But definitely the likes of PVRs and the theaters are going to have a major challenges. The entire film industry is going to have a major challenge in terms of going forward in the next few months. The industry that may not have major challenge is the pharmaceutical industry, because that's an industry will get revived the fastest, because the medicines are required everywhere. Auto industry is going to suffer. There would be a big setback for the electric vehicle industries, because people need to now invest in the electric vehicles, need to promote it, need to advertise it. And that would be a setback, because they won't be able to do it because it requires a lot of burning of the cash. Plus the components from China may not come so easily. So the auto industry may suffer a lot. Aviation industry may suffer a lot if you're just asking a sector wise, because people are not going to fly overnight and going to go, because they are going to scare. For the next 3 months, people will avoid crowd. And wherever the industry requires crowd, that industry is going to suffer.
Just add on perspective, sorry.
Yeah, Abhishek and Sai. Yeah, we'll take
Sorry,
one.
I'll follow up to that.
10 seconds. I think I just want to bucket it into a B2B company and a B2C company, right? I might be generalizing, but B2C companies typically leave a little more margin for drop in customers, reduced growth, and things like that. B2B businesses typically, operate really at the breaking end of the rubber band, right? Because you're dealing with businesses, you're assuming there's more predictability, you're assuming that, there's not going to be too much of a variation in demand and things like that. So I think B2B businesses will be hit more because of that really lean margin that they leave in all their assumptions. B2C companies will, find it a little easier. I know I'm generalizing, but I just wanted to make this quick point.
Sure. We'll just take one last comment from Sai, and then we'll move to the.
I was saying that I think there are a lot of trends that are changing in terms of the behavior. So while the rest of the world is kind of getting deeper into the COVID-19 situation, I think China has been partly coming out of it. And it's interesting to see some trends that have started emerging from there. So while people are now coming back to the factories and getting back to work, I think the one interesting thing that they saw there was people starting to use their own personal vehicles as compared to using shared transport or using shared mobility kind of platforms and so on. So things that we saw 2 years back, changing customer behaviors, I think this is once again starting to change some of those things. So I think sector by sector, we'll have to look at what is going to change. Like for instance, we are clearly going to look at the need for office space or as much office space as we currently do. And so moving towards more variable cost structures like Abhishek was alluding to earlier, or even looking at the relevance of travel anymore, because earlier almost for every meeting, every 3 days a week, I was flying out of Mumbai, and but today I can very well think of the need for any of that travel. So I think a lot of behaviors will change, and I think every company, every sector will need to closely look at what those changed trends are going to be before they can get a pulse on how the business are going to get fully impacted.
So I'll just add this panel discussion with a note that change will be the only constant. There will be a change in behavior, there will be a change in consumer behavior, change in priority of buying, change in the supply chain, change in the business dynamics. These changes will obviously bring opportunities for few, and at the same time, it will disrupt few. Now, at which end of the coin you want to be is the kind of an introspection which you as an organization will have to do. Yeah, I think there is a lot of information which is available. There's a lot of data which is available. Just try to go through it, reach out to the experts and try to see that where, which end. And I hope that everyone who's on the panel here and the participants are on the side where they take an opportunity from here. With that, I think we will want to start I would request the panelists to be here because some of the startups that we have like 5 to 6 startups who are just going to give a 2-minute showcase about what they are doing in terms of helping the corporates in this situation. The corporates can take advantage of it, and we'll wrap that in next 15 minutes. I think we are already run out of time, but I will just kind of want to give the opportunities to the startup out here. So Eric, do you want to kind of quickly start that session of the startups?
Sure.
We have all the startups.
What we're going to do next is we're going to have 6 startups presenting. So I'm going to read the order of the startups so that they're ready to go. And then I was asked to provide a brief summary of the panel discussion, which I'll do in about 60 seconds. And then that way the startups will have a minute to take a breath and get ready for the pitches. And again, they're not investor pitches. These are solution pitches where the startups are going to present what they can do and how it hopefully can help people listening in and watching as well. So the order is going to be SignalX, Knight FinTech, Cognitive ROI, AG.com, Simplify, and Swipes. So no preparation here, but I'm going to really briefly share a few thoughts on summarizing some of the key takeaways from the panel. And first, just want to say, thank you for a really distinguished panel. Thank you on behalf of everyone listening here. It's really good of everyone to jump in and give their time. So we talked at first about what happened, how did we get here? And one of the summary points was there was a denial phase that took place because governments and businesses wanted to look positively about their future, but as a result of that, actually then risked the economy because they didn't quite look at the objective reality, which now people have come around to. Measures include supporting liquidity, which we're seeing from the government, and fixed expenses are going to be most critical, like salaries. 2 months is one thing, but something beyond 6 is going to get really difficult for corporates, particularly with larger salary bases. We talked then about how to balance sales, employment, and sustainability to the company. And there were a few points about what should we do now in this time of crisis. So number one, take the opportunity to reflect and reimagine what the business ought to be in the future. Think about cost efficiencies and innovations to follow future trends of the evolving consumer market. Second, look at product readiness for the next step. As we can see, it's so important now in this time, if we're not making direct sales, what can we do so when we get back into the market, we're ready to pick up the beat right away. And then finally, is there time for a new theory of cost cutting, where instead of just thinking, well, if I try to reduce my expenses and increase revenue, have an understanding of globalization and systemic risk of what impact this is going to have in the aggregate economy, globalized as we live in now. Then we finally switched to, well, what should we do for the future? Number one thought was emergency preparedness. So not just do we have enough masks, but do we have the infrastructure in place so that we can gather the information to make better decisions going forward for whatever the next mask might be that companies need to provide? Second, we talked about transparency and connection with employees and customers and how important that is. And while we've seen social connections are important and people want to get back to work, perhaps certain travel may not be as important, which may affect industries and the way businesses operate. And then finally, really monitor the data to see what we can learn. Then we ended with a quote from my friend Amit: change is the new constant. So that's our very brief on-the-spot summary of the discussion. Thank you again to the panelists for participating.